a lot of people's paradigms. I already know, of course, for the people who will be tuned in, that this is earth shattering because it's like, wow, this is information that we aren't privy to or exposed to on a regular day basis. But yeah, man, so it's like seeing this standpoint, um, even right now, I see like similarities, bro, where you can have that poor white man who's off in a trailer park somewhere and he can still identify and say, I'm better than you. But looking back, knowing that they were working the fields, things like that, when did that transition happen, if it ever did happen, of them going from those fields to then being quote unquote free?
Yeah, I don't think it ever happened.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do agree. Yep.
You see what I'm
Yep.
saying? And there's a
Yep.
good book. It's about $50,000. I actually have a PDF. I will give it to you.
Sheesh.
It's
50
called
racks.
"The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War."
Mm,
Great book. The Civil War didn't happen while you think it happened. Yeah, it was about freeing the slaves, but it wasn't the slaves that you think. So when we get into this whole propaganda movement, it's all based off of the apostolistic authorities. This has been a stride effort to capture the people, subjugate the people, and control the minds of the people since 1452 under Pope Nicholas V, when he first planned out the dooms, the verses, and wrote the official act of the doctrine of discovery,
mm,
which all these churches, all
yeah.
these particular entities led out to it. So when you look at these whole Afrocentric movements, which is in all the Western education, when you look at the African society culture, African culture society, anything dealing with the whole Negro advancements, this is funding. This is funding from the church, which is apostolic authorities. When it be coming to the universities, now they're funded by the CIA, which is ultimately built off the back of the same masonry people. I'm gonna show you that right now. Matter of fact, let's get into that.
Yeah,
Robert
let's do it.
Finley, one of the guys that started the American Colonization Society, also was the pastor and professor of the Presbyterian minister of this church at Bethel University. James Monroe, y'all pretty sure y'all know who this is. All right, the fifth president. These people all became part of this African lodge. I'm gonna show you that African doesn't mean black people. These are a couple of your founding forefathers of the Pan African movement. This is the first people that you would have ran across that pushed anything Pan African. These are your first forefathers, godfathers of the Pan Africans. All right, Richard Allen, James 14, and Paul Cuffey.
All copy. Gotcha. I'm about to pull this up. I'm about to pull your screen up and get these off. There we go. Yep.
So these are from the source memoirs. We're gonna get into these Negroes right here. So listen, these particular guys met up with this guy, the white guy who owned the church. They met up at his church, right? On January the 15th, 1817. 14 other black leaders called a meeting at Bethel Church to discuss the ACS, which is the American Colonization Society, to speak on the idea of colonization, right? Almost 3,000 black men packed the church. The majority of were prominent black leaders. James 14, Richard Allen, and John Gloucester, and Mr. Jones were in favor of immigrating to Africa. However, when 14 called for those that was in favor to go to Africa, not a single soul in the church said a damn word.
Hey, nobody wanted to go. Wow. How about that? Even back then.
Yeah, and so when you get into some of these stories, a lot of this later on transpired into what we call the Franz Boas W.E.D. Du Bois era,
Hmm.
which is when universities went outside and started first implementing cultural aspect into the colleges. Anthropology, that's what they call it. That's when they
Yeah.
start studying this, and this was all done under Franz Boas. I'm gonna show you that these whole African culture, African society came from the anthropological sector, which was all funded by the CIA. It
Mm.
was all funded by the CIA.
Wow.
I got every documentation, and I hate to say it, I got every documentation from all their leaders. John Henry Clark.
Just froze on the brother. Hey, are you able to hear me, brother?
How we all ultimately heard about the
I think that you just froze. 1 second. If you're able to hear me, I think it just froze. Let me try it one more time. I think that you muted. Let's see. I think your mic muted. Let's see. Let me know when it unmutes.
good.
Perfect.
We back
Yep.
good.
All right. Hey, bro, look, right when you start talking about the information when you was getting heavy, that's when the audio want to go out, huh?
Oh, they knew we was dropping it too, because we was just exposing the African Studies
That's
Association with the CIA and the
that's
Carnegies.
crazy.
We was
That's
just getting
crazy.
into that. We was just getting into the CIA and how Dr. Ben, Leonard Jeffries, John Henry Clark, and the African Society, Afro Center, Africana Studies was
Mm,
funded by the CIA as a
mm.
as an open mission operative from non-government affiliates. I'm about to show you all the documentation. I got the debriefing. I got the directors list. I got the CIA objective list. I got everything. Columbia
Wow.
University was the first school to take CIA funding as a propaganda experiment and to use certain studies to use it as propaganda. Those studies all fell with under the African Association's African Culture Studies. Why is the CIA funding that?
Mm. Wow. Because they're trying to get us to go back, or not even to go back, excuse me, but to have people leave this land. Our people leave this land.
All right, that's a good question. Why would they need people to leave this land?
Hmm. Wow.
Why would they need people to leave this land?
Mm. They
They
got to
want
take
the
it.
resources. They
That's
want
right.
the technology.
Yeah.
That's what the whole doctrine of discovery is. Take
Hmm.
over all the goods, whether it's mobile or immobile,
Wow.
even buildings or what do you say, municipalities.
Yeah.
That's what they supposed to take over. They even done took your government style over. They didn't. I mean, we're at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to what we supposed to have, in contrary to what we had.
That's right.
We got to get back to that. And I feel like us as indigenous peoples are waking up all across the globe right now. We're waking it
Yeah.
up more than any other people would even imagine. We went from thinking that you was an African to wearing
Mm.
dashikis and unks 10, 20 years ago to a rapid rise of the brothers and sisters pushing this indigenous narrative. It's
Mm.
hard to learn something and then unlearn it and then try to learn something else.
Yeah.
The hard process ain't learning the new stuff. We all learn new stuff every day. It's unlearning the bull crap that we learn. Because a lot
Yeah.
of that we still believe and we bring that baggage and perspective with us, and it don't mesh well with the new perspective that you have aligned yourself with.
Mm.
So you can't You can't say that you're indigenous and aboriginal, but still feel like everybody come from Africa. That don't, it's kind of a conflict of interest,
It
if
is.
you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? But once we understand that the term aboriginal can be used on for any indigenous peoples across the planet, it just means first.
Yeah.
There was people first in every land, I guess. Excuse me. I reckon. We've been taking stuff, like it's so much to get into, like when it deals with aboriginal stuff. I can talk about so much stuff. I can talk about food for just an hour alone, just indigenous food crops,
Mm.
and how Africa has 600 of our food crops and
Wow.
been having them for 7,000 years. How did they get there?
Had to be some type of trade.
Or somebody just went over there and set up shop.
Yeah.
See, I always say this. I don't think we traded with a lot of people. I think that's an old narrative that we might have to do away with.
Mm.
I don't think nobody had nothing that we didn't have.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to trade with something I already got.
That's facts. Yeah.
And it's kind of hard for you to trade with me when you ain't got nothing.
Yep.
Do you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
maybe it's more of an establishment of culture instead of trading culture. Maybe our culture is a establishing culture. Maybe the reason we see civilization in other places because we established it.
Wow.
Maybe that's what we're looking at is the fingerprints of the Americas. Why is Africa the home of people but has the less structures on the planet?
Yeah.
Africa
Okay.
in general probably only has 300 pyramids.
And it's way more here in the Americas. Yeah,
We
that's
got
right.
300 in Georgia.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
found 10,000 in Guatemala. Literally, I'm not even exaggerating. They found 60,000 structures in Guatemala. 10,000 were pyramids. Like, come on. You got 300 in your whole continent in Africa. We got 10,000 just sitting down the street. Like, it's a culture where we establish things. You find the fingerprints of the Americas there.
Mm.
The narrative that they're giving you isn't correct, and you just got to listen. They'll tell you, well, if you ask somebody that's pushing the narrative in mainstream data, what are those pyramids in Egypt built for? They'll say, oh, they built for the dead.
Yeah, it's a tomb. That's what they like to say. Yeah.
What dead person have they pulled out of any of those pyramids?
Hmm.
Name one.
Hmm.
They haven't. They haven't found a dead person in the pyramid. Why would you say that they built for the dead and all the dead that you have found haven't wasn't found in the pyramid? They've been found in every other spot besides a pyramid. All the kings, all the royals, Nefertiti, King Tut, none of them was in pyramids.
Hmm.
They're not built for the dead. That's a lie that is backed up by the mainstream narrative. That's a general consensus. If you was to Google what are the pyramids for, science is going to tell you right now they're built for the dead and don't have a lick of evidence of that. And they don't even have they ain't found a specimen, a pharaoh, a king, a servant, nothing inside of those pyramids. So they've been lying to us. The main, we got to challenge the narrative. We can't just let them keep telling us what they want to tell us and we don't challenge it and we see it's a lie. Like they have nothing to support it.
This is crazy, bro. And brother, I just seeing this right here, African Studies Association of the United States and Columbia University, like seeing that, bro. All of this has been orchestrated.
Yeah, it gets worse. This is Arthur Krim.
Yeah.
This is the Columbia University and the United States Intelligence Community Act.
Hmm.
maybe I saved some of this and put together a full presentation just for this, which I got a lot to get into with this. We got
Yeah.
names too. We got the names too. So a lot of this narrative about this whole, I believe that the reason this Pan African stuff was pushed so far ahead of us in movies and hip hop and everything else is simply the simple answer is they funded the propaganda. It was funded. There was no way we wasn't going to see it. There was no way it wasn't going to be pushed in front of you. There was no way it wasn't going to be in the movies. There was no way it wasn't going to be in hip hop. It was funded by the CIA, which strictly deals with Central Intelligence, centralizing Americans' intelligence or propaganda. They say they only work domestically. I got obvious proof to contrary to that, according to their own documentations. So indigenous peoples need to understand that their narrative is not the narrative. Their history is not our history. Your history is the history that you bring to the table, that you speak about as an indigenous brother. The ones that you write down, that's the history. They're not telling our story. No one has heard our story. None of these half-written books, none of the archaeological data says it. These are just, they barely can utter the sentence to speak on how marvelous and magnificent our people is. I don't think that a word that best describes our people. They try. You know, we're just a miraculous people that I don't think we understand how much power and potential that we have, how much things we've been created, how long we've been creating, how long we've been inventing. We've been some of the greatest inventors the world has ever seen during every era of human beings, from 20,000 years ago to the 1800s to 2024. Indigenous peoples in America has been at the forefront of the inventions and innovations to the world.
That's right. And brother, hearing that statement, right, I think about a George Washington Carver of how he was able to cultivate the land, do experimentations and things like that. Do you think that that's because he had indigenous heritage to this land? You know, when we talk about our black inventors and we talk about them as well.
Yeah, I believe that he was very in tune with some of his indigenous heritage and some of his ways. As a matter of fact, he come from a long line of root workers,
Hmm.
shamans, indigenous herbalists. So him learning herbs, which he just didn't create the peanut butter. I think he had over 300 patents of herbs that he had. So in other words, he was a root worker. He was a shaman. He was an indigenous spiritual. He would have been a medicine man in
And
any other
even,
time. And he
yeah,
just happened to be caught up in the time where the colonial powers that had a hold on him, and they were restricting him. He still was able to shine through that, creating plants and the formula that we call warehouses today. And he used that warehouse factory chain link plan by looking at plants, so he can study a plant, see how it distribute all its minerals throughout the plant in a very methodical way. He was like, we can do this in a warehouse. We can mill the material, we can produce it, we can push, and this is how you get plants and warehouses today from that same concept. So
whew, bro, that's fire, bro. And man, seeing the Mayans in those pictures, that was so powerful, right? I think about one of the films, Apocalyptico, that film, that was a very
ooh,
powerful film, like 2008. But I think, man, when it comes to talking about Mayan culture, that people get scared because people think about human sacrifice and people think that they were violent off of European indoctrination. When it comes to the Mayans, how can we somewhat demystify them and not have them appear so creepy? You know, the same way when it comes to voodoo and Haiti. So when it comes to our Mayans, brother and sisters, man, what was their everyday life? like civilization, like, and even when it comes to human sacrifice, was that even true? How they would try to make it seem like they were just killing people, taking out their hearts, even in films, how they tried to depict that all the time.
That's a good question. I don't think they found any evidence of Mayan sacrifice from the Inca or the Mayan ever.
Wow.
No archaeology, but they
How
have
about that?
found sacrifices from later cultures that were
Hmm.
blending and merging with Inca, that was merging with Mayans, that we later on to call the Aztec culture, which ain't a particular people, which they like to tell you it is. It just means a time period where particular cultures merge. It was a melting
Right.
pot.
Yeah.
Uh, the Aztecs.
Yeah.
When you look at Aztecs, you got brothers like Montezuma,
Yep.
and then you got images like you see of Eurasian type people that is considered Aztec as well. That
Hmm.
it's two different cultures, and it gets overlapped when looking at the evidence as far as
Yeah.
archaeological or anthropological. But in retrospect, you got a group of people that was already here that probably directly descends from the Mayan, Olmec, Inca that ran into an Eurasian people, which I showed you the guy in Mexico snatching them up.
Yep.
A few years later, you got this whole Aztec culture. It's just a mixed and
Mhm.
blended culture,
Yeah.
and it got confused when looking at it. But yeah,
Mhm.
these,
Yeah.
so yeah, the Aztec did sacrifice people. They were sacrificing people,
I think.
mostly their own.
Mm, got you. Yeah, bro. Because man, seeing that, I'm just all the information that you presented. I'm just I'm mind blown. And I would say, or ask rather, how did we get conquered, bro? Because man, from seeing all the documentations and from seeing, that we were so advanced, how did a people who weren't advanced, a people who carried disease and had to copy our own structure when it comes to politics, civilization, how did we fold? How did we crumble as a people to where we have no idea today, right now, who we are, where we need people like yourself or a Chief Sekou, various others
Well,
to bring that all the way
that's
back
a
for.
very, very, very good question,
Mm,
and it's a hard question to answer as well. But I'm gonna answer
yeah.
as simple as possible. Uh, we did it to ourselves.
Mm,
Uh, one spoiled apple could ruin a bunch.
yep.
So it don't take a lot of people to destroy the whole nation. It just take a couple people in position to make selfish decisions that have ramifications where we fall at fault for it. So ultimately, I think it was our people that did this. And then there's some deeper concepts I will get into, uh,
Hmm.
mixing,
Mm,
amalgamating, the power
yeah.
structure being tilted to one particular hand and to another one based off of this, backhanded deals,
Mhm.
and obviously brute force from the colonial powers, which
Right.
ultimately what we call the judicial system today. So
Yeah.
colonial powers colonized the world using the act of colonization or the law of conquest to protect them, much like the
Mm,
judicial system um, goes in our community, create warfare, and then hides behind the judicial system as their protection.
boom. Yeah, you're right. And we see that right now.
Yeah, the same people that's killing you is the same ones you got to go talk to tell that they killing you. It don't
Mm,
make sense. So that
yes.
paperwork never makes it to the top or where it needs to go.
Yeah, bro. And man, I think your screen it might have timed out again.
Okay, let me
Can you
see if I
see?
can fix it. I don't know what the heck is going on. Is
You
it good
good?
now?
Yep. Hey, we cooking, bro. Man, from seeing people like Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan's podcast, man, I'm gonna had one of my friends, who was just like pissed off about it because I think Joe he had asked him about the Olmecs, like what happened or were these people even black? And Graham was like, we aren't too sure, yada yada yada. It's the same white explanations and excuses, but from seeing these white archaeologists right now, European archaeologists, of trying to still hold on, and it's clear as day that these were people who are just like us, who look just like us, who are us. When it
Yeah.
comes to the Olmecs, do you think that this current Eurocentric white supremacist approach to history, do you see this falling right now during this current time period where I see even white people asking about the Olmecs?
I think that it's already in this position of crumbling.
Yeah.
And when you ask where the Olmecs is, uh, you're looking at one.
Right. Right.
They
Right.
settled in the areas where my ancestors lived. They
Mm,
settled and lived in Kentucky. They settled in Tennessee. They settled in Carolinas and Georgia. The Yamassee is pretty much the Olmec. Matter of fact, let me pull up a source where I
yeah.
got that from. We're just gonna pull up a source. Yeah. So when you read right here, it says the Olmecs or the Holmecs was the first Itchkins to venture into the Kentucky area, where they did not make a permanent settlement. They did come in contact with the Talagans, where they were not able to subdue them, but left the country and invaded Tennessee and the Virginias in the west coast of Carolina, as well as the Yamassees of Georgia, may be the remains of the Olmec, but the bulk of the nation are the Ottokans. So, I mean, they
Mm,
know where the Olmec went.
wow.
And this is from
Wow.
the Natural Aboriginal History of Tennessee. It's a very good book.
Right. You came with the sources, brother. And man, I appreciate you for your time. I just got a few more questions for you because, bro,
No
you really
problem.
got me fascinated, man. You cooking. When it comes to this hot topic, and I support it, of course, reparations, right? How do you think we should properly approach this? Because from seeing informations about the Olmecs and about us being indigenous to this land, whether it's on Twitter space or social media or in public, at the barbershop, you have some people saying, hey, when it comes to trying to get reparations properly, we should actually come with our actual tribal names. But then you have other people saying, no, we should say that we're foundational Black Americans. In your own personal opinion, from all the documents that you've been exposed to, how do you think we should approach reparations?
I believe we shouldn't leave no stone unturned. Every
Mm,
day we live our life with many names. You is obviously you're somebody's son.
right.
You're somebody's friend. You're
Yep.
somebody brother potentially. So
Mm-hmm.
you have many titles. You could be somebody's father. You see what I'm
Yep.
saying? You somebody. So you wear a lot of names already. So we know we have a lot of names throughout time, and we must embrace and express all of them and ask for it. So and ultimately we want restitution. As
Mm-hmm.
indigenous aborigines, we had land stole.
Yeah.
We have patents that was borrowed that haven't been paid and secured. We have land that has been falsely purchased with no receipts. You understand? And ultimately, we've been at war. We're prisoners of war, and so
Mm,
ultimately, we need restitution. And I believe restitution encompasses what we call reparations, repairing for war wages and damages. Obviously, we're victims of war, and we need it. And we're going to get it in any name of mislabeling and proper labeling that we should do it up under, and all of them, because we did great things under black and colored.
yeah.
We
Yep.
created, as a matter of fact, during that era, they called it the Black Invention era. We
Yep.
created a lot of things under African American, under Indigenous, we done did a lot of things under all these particular titles and jackets that we wear. So